Welcome to the space between two lines. I'm Alex Saunders, and this is a space for real, honest conversations about fertility, pregnancy loss, and the journey to parenthood. Here, we hear the stories of people navigating the highs, the lows, and everything in between. A place to feel seen, understood, and less alone. Because every story matters, and so does yours. Today's guest is Katelyn. After 7 years of infertility, failed IUI cycles, multiple rounds of IVF, and the heartbreak of recurrent pregnancy loss, Katelyn has experienced more grief than anyone should have to endure on the path to parenthood. In the midst of that journey came the devastating loss of her son, Fletcher, who was stillborn. In this episode, Katelyn shares the reality of navigating infertility, unimaginable loss, and the strength it takes to keep moving forward when life looks nothing like you imagined. Her story is one of deep love, profound grief, and the enduring bond between a mother and her son. Welcome to the podcast, Katelyn. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. Did you want to start by introducing yourself to our audience and just telling us what your life looks like at the moment?
Sure. So my name's Katelyn. My husband Joel and I have been married for 6 years now. We've been together for 10. We started trying for a baby about 7 years ago now. So that's been quite a long journey. I work in a women's family violence refuge and my husband is an operations manager. We live at home with our 2 dogs and yeah, that's basically us in a nutshell.
So you said you've been trying for 7 years. Did you want to take me back to when you decided that you did want to grow your family? And at that point, if you had any preconceived ideas around what conception might look like for you guys?
Sure. So it was about 6 months before our wedding that we decided that we wanted to start trying. We thought it was going to be really easy for us. And I remember at the time Googling all of the cute ways that we could announce our pregnancy at our wedding, which was going to be very special, which it obviously didn't play out that way. So I, growing up, had always had really bad periods. So there was always a question about whether I had endometriosis. But going back 7 years, endo wasn't something that was being investigated as much as it is now. So it's not something that was ever investigated for me. So we always had that in the back of our minds that it might make things a little bit more challenging, but nothing had been diagnosed. So we thought it would be quite an easy journey. Here we are.
Yeah. So have you always, or at that point, did you have regular cycles that you could track?
I did, yeah. So I've always had a really regular cycle. So everything was really easy to track and we did that for quite a long time. So yeah, we started trying naturally in June of 2019 and it wasn't until March 2021 that we started with IVF. So in that time, we did see a fertility specialist and we had all of the normal checks done. And we did do quite a few months of ovulation induction as well, which was always unsuccessful. So I think it was about 12 months of trying naturally and tracking my cycle religiously before I started seeing a doctor and asking for help. But at that stage, I was 21 or 22. So I found it really hard to be taken seriously. Was being told that it will happen and you just need to stress less and go on a holiday, have a few drinks and it will happen. So it did take a little while for me to get a referral to an IVF specialist. But once we did that, the process moved kind of quickly. I think when you're at that stage and you've had, 12 months plus of negative tests and you're starting to get really scared that it's not going to happen for you, it just becomes like a natural progression that you kind of start saying, well, IVF is the next step. So at that stage, we were really quite excited. We never believed that it would take a long time. We thought we'd be like a 1 cycle and done because we didn't have any issues. It was always labeled as unexplained fertility. So I remember, just being really excited about making that decision and going ahead with it.
Yeah, okay. And at that point, when you did first go to the fertility specialist, was there any discussions around endometriosis or that there could be anything else at play that was stopping you from conceiving?
There was minimal discussions around endometriosis, but what I was told from the first specialist I saw was that if you were doing IVF, then endometriosis didn't matter. which I now know is probably not the best advice, but there is, a lot of differing opinions by specialists out there about that. So that's really tricky. And it wasn't until we'd already done quite a few rounds of IVF that they decided to investigate for the endometriosis. And then that's when that was diagnosed. So
yeah, okay. So as a first point, you went to the fertility specialist and they first suggested ovulation induction.
yeah,
So how many rounds of that did you do? And was that with hormones?
I think we did about 6 rounds of ovulation induction, and that was a bit of a mix. So I remember doing some injections. It must have been Gonal F, I think, and a trigger shot. And then we also did just some with letrozole and a trigger shot as well. But none of them were ever successful. There was never a chemical. There was never any kind of positive test. So I've never had a natural pregnancy.
Okay. How are you feeling at this point? Because obviously, even in itself, trying to conceive naturally and then month after month doing the pregnancy tests and having negative results on waiting for your period is extremely taxing. And then on top of that, where you were trying to seek support, you're kind of being palmed off by doctors saying like, you're young, it'll be fine. Like, how did you move through that time and how did you cope mentally?
It was really difficult. And I think that was probably the stage of my life where my mental health was probably at its lowest. I think that as you go through a journey like that, you start to lose confidence with your body and start to wonder why your body isn't matching what your mind wants to do. And especially given that Joel and I had just been married and, that's the logical sequence of things. You get married, you have a baby. It was a really big adjustment to see that our life wasn't turning out the way that we had initially planned. So I did struggle a lot with my mental health at that point. And it was probably at that point where I started to throw my life into trying to become a mum as well. And I started to kind of lose who I was as a person. It was all just about the IVF and about becoming a mum, which is something that I feel really passionate about now, is encouraging people to try and keep a life outside of IVF, because as I said, that is when you do really struggle with your mental health.
Yeah, and it's really hard though, because it's also consuming and you do to a degree just put your life on hold because you're moving through the motions and waiting for the next thing and the next thing. And I feel like sometimes it feels really difficult to be able to have a life outside of IVF. You can though, but it's just like planning for it and being able to actually, like, you can go and do things, but you've just got to plan it with the timing, right? But I think when you're also consumed by it and you're so like caught up in the process, you just think that there's nothing outside of that and you just can't do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So once you've done the rounds of ovulation induction, and at this point they're still saying there's no real reason why you shouldn't be falling pregnant. The next step was IVF. Do you want to just take me through what that looks like for you, how you managed the first round, how you did the medications and all those kinds of things?
Yeah, of course. So after the ovulation induction, we weren't particularly happy with the clinic that we were with. So we changed to another clinic in Melbourne. So that kind of added its own layer of stresses because it was quite far away from where we were living in Geelong. And yes, we went for our first egg collection. It was really stressful. I was working full time at the time in quite a high stress job. And I found it really difficult to balance that at the same time as going through the hormone medications and things. But I think all in all, I handled that first round really well. But as I said, I think it was just the excitement taking over and thinking that, this was going to get us a baby. We don't have any infertility problems. This is going to be it for us. So we did that first egg collection in March of 2021, and we collected 10 eggs, which became 1 embryo, and we did a fresh transfer, which was unfortunately negative.
Okay. And when you had those 10 eggs collected originally, were you well educated in knowing how the numbers can cut down? Was that a shock to you that you only got 1 embryo?
It was a huge shock. I was someone that would get on the Facebook groups and everything, and I was quite aware of the whole process, but it was still hard, and it's still hard. I've done 5 egg collections now, and it never gets any easier when you find out that number on day 1 and then you get the number on day 5 or day 6. There's always a huge drop, and that's always disappointing. I don't think it matters how many times you go through it. It's really, really hard.
Yeah. Would you say that's the hardest part of IVF, that far to wait for embryos?
Yeah, absolutely. I say that to everybody all the time. I find like the 2-week wait is hard, but nothing compares to that 5 days when you're waiting to find out if all of your hard work was for nothing or whether you've got a good result.
did you have a fresh transfer for that first one?
I did.
Your fresh transfer, and then you've had your 2-week wait. And obviously you went into IVF quite confident, thinking like, this is going to be our fix. This is going to be our baby. How did you process that negative result? And did you test at home?
I did test at home. I'm pretty well known now on TikTok as the crazy lady who does way too many tests. I can't remember when that started, but I'm sure I did test at home. I'm not sure if I was as crazy back then. But yeah, I was definitely testing at home. So I knew when I got the call that it wasn't going to be good news. So I think I had time to process, which was good. But I think I remember thinking that they always say it's a 50-50 chance per embryo. So I think I was probably a little bit delusional in that moment, thinking, oh, that's okay, 50-50, that means the next one has to work.
Yeah.
So we just kind of threw ourselves back into another round and told ourselves that that would be it for us.
Yeah. So that meant another egg collection.
It did.
How many eggs, do you remember how many eggs you got for that second one?
So I actually took a break between the first egg collection and the second. I can't remember exactly why, but I would say that was likely due to finances. It was obviously quite expensive to do an egg collection. Yeah, so we went in for our second egg collection in February of 2022.
Yeah.
And we got 22 eggs that time. So I remember being very excited about that, but obviously very sore as well. And out of that, we were lucky enough to get 3 embryos that time. So that was a much better result for us.
Yeah. And because you had so many eggs, did that mean you still freeze all cycle?
No, I actually still did a fresh transfer that time, which was negative as well.
Okay.
And then the next month we did a frozen transfer, which was also negative. And a few months after that, in July of 2022, we did another frozen with that last embryo, which was also negative.
Okay. And when you were doing your frozen rounds, was that in sync with your natural cycle, or were you taking medication in the lead up?
I believe for the first frozen transfer, it was in sync with my natural cycle. But after that, they switched me to a complete hormone replacement cycle. So everything I was taking was completely synthetic to kind of create the environment they wanted in my body, which was really difficult. It was sometimes I think I was taking about 20 tablets a day of hormones, up to 4 pessaries a day, injections, estrogen gel rubbed on my belly. It felt like a full-time job, not only administering the medications, but trying to keep track of how many repeats I had and when I needed to go and collect more and all of that. So my frozen embryo transfers have been really, really full-on and difficult.
It's been a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So at the point that you've had 4 unsuccessful transfers, are you asking questions as to, when you're telling me that there's no reason why this shouldn't be working, like why it's not working?
Yeah, I was definitely asking questions all of the time, but I just felt like I was still getting quite fobbed off. The whole, you're still quite young, there's no issues, just keep trying and one will eventually implant. But I kept pushing and I kept pushing, and that's when I was able to go in for my first laparoscopy. So we did that in August of 2022. And that was quite a tricky situation. I went in expecting that they would not only diagnose, but treat it if it was found. I woke up after the surgery to be told that I had stage 4 endometriosis, but that they didn't treat it because they thought that because I was doing IVF, it wouldn't matter. So that was a really long saga. And it wasn't until a few months after that where I ended up in the emergency department with a very painful cyst, which was also found on that first laparoscopy, that I saw a different gynecologist and he said to me, Katelyn, that's not right. This will be significantly impacting not only your egg quality, but your likelihood of a transfer succeeding. And also there was a concern over whether that cyst could be cancerous as well, the cyst that they had left during that last surgery. So I was rushed into surgery that next day to have that cyst biopsied and removed. And he did, I think it was about 3 hours of excision of my endometriosis at that point as well. I was feeling really conflicted because on one hand, they were saying, you don't need to treat this. And they were really experienced fertility specialists and gynecologists. So you want to trust them, but then you do your own research and you see that perhaps that's not right. But then I will admit that there is some research out there that says that they were right. So it's really tricky when you're being told different things by different specialists, and that can create a lot of mistrust in this space and make it really difficult to move forward. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So after you had that surgery, what did things look like? How was your recovery? And I guess you probably had to wait to have that cyst tested to make sure that everything was okay.
Yeah, so that was October 2022 that I went into hospital and I had the excision surgery and the cysts removed. And I did have to wait a few weeks to get those results back, which was really nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So they were all fine, luckily. And then it wasn't until May of 2023 that we decided to do more IVF.
Yeah.
The specialist that removed my endometriosis said that because they hadn't identified any other fertility problems, he recommended that we tried naturally for a while after the laparoscopy. So we were, of course, full of hope that, that was the missing piece. But again, there was never any natural pregnancy from that as well. So yeah, come May 2023, we went in for another egg collection.
Yeah. And what did those numbers look like for you?
So we had 20 collected and 4 embryos this time.
Oh, wow.
So I have no doubt that removing the endometriosis improved my egg quality and my outcomes with that.
Yeah. Were you doing anything alongside, obviously their fertility medications, but did you make any environmental changes or were you taking any supplements or anything? Because it seems as you've moved along, your egg quality has improved.
Yeah, I can't give you specific dates or anything, but there was several times over the years that I would see a naturopath and I'd be on like the kitchen sink of supplements.
Yeah.
And there was times that I went through and I removed all of the toxins and I stopped wearing makeup and I stopped burning candles and wearing perfume. And I changed to the all natural cleaning products and all of that. As I said, I can't tell you when, so I don't know if that would have been around then. But as I was saying before, those times in my life where I just found that my mental health went downhill, where I just changed every little bit of my life to be focused on IVF. So that's something that I try not to do too much, but it is a really hard balance because you obviously do want to do everything you can to make sure it works, but you also need to live at the same time.
Yeah, there's a fine line between is this causing me more stress and, causing more harm on my body than good.
But yeah, and it's really hard because you see, people are falling pregnant every day that are using chemicals or they're using drugs or they're drinking. So, sometimes, some days I just look at it and I'm like, why am I taking all of these supplements and using a natural cleaning spray? Yeah, and these other people are able to fall pregnant easily. So you kind of say to yourself, if they can fall pregnant like that, I can still have a coffee today and fall pregnant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're trying naturally and then you've had your egg collection. And then did you have a natural transfer with that one or did you wait for a frozen?
No, so that one I actually did end up getting OHSS. Okay, so and my estrogen was really, really high. So we had to do a freeze-all.
Yeah.
And it was at that point where we started to question whether we had some kind of chromosomal abnormality with our embryos.
Yep.
We had both done really extensive genetic testing and we didn't share any of the same conditions. But we did decide at that point to send away 3 of the 4 embryos for testing. The 4th wasn't good enough quality. So we sent away 3 for testing, had a very, very long, anxious wait, and then received the call that all 3 of those were perfect.
Okay.
Which was equal parts exciting and equal parts like, what now? Like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we did a transfer after that in July of 2023, and that was our first pregnancy.
Okay.
Which we were obviously over the moon, but we did have some problems with slow rising HCG. So it was a really long, drawn out process of, I think it was a scan every 4 or 5 days to check whether it was developing. And in the end, it ended up stopping developing at 6 weeks. And then we found out at about 8 weeks that it definitely wasn't going to be going anywhere.
Okay, I'm so sorry to hear that. When you first originally had that positive pregnancy test, number one, how did that feel after so long of, trying?
I think it felt really surreal. And I think at that point I had been in this kind of community for so long and I'd been on the Facebook groups and you see everybody doing their line progression and my line progression just wasn't looking like everybody else's. So it never really, I was excited, but it never really completely hit home that we're going to be bringing a baby home. I think I always knew that there was, just something a little bit wrong.
Okay. And then when you had your blood test, they called and said you're pregnant, but your HCG is quite low.
Yeah.
And then I assume you had follow-up blood tests and it was rising but slowly rising.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you had the scan and could imagine that would have been really hard.
It was really hard, and I really struggled with the kind of end process of that as well. So my IVF clinic in Melbourne was not open to anything apart from a DNC, but I had really talked myself into having a really big fear of getting Asherman's syndrome, which is when you have too many DNCs and that creates scar tissue in your uterus, which makes it almost impossible to fall pregnant. So I was really passionate about trying to have a natural miscarriage first, and they wouldn't support me with that decision. So I think it was about a 3-week process. I had to see several doctors because every time I went to see a doctor to ask for that medication, which is technically the medication they use for an abortion, and you have to be licensed to provide that medication, several of them said, no, I can't give it to you. Like, I'm not registered. So I was basically having to doctor shop to have a miscarriage.
How awful.
Which shouldn't happen. And then I ended up in the public early pregnancy clinic down here in Geelong, and I was able to eventually get the help to get the tablets and pass it naturally.
How awful, because even to have to remain pregnant for that long would have just been horrific. I can't imagine. Did you need a referral to go to the early pregnancy centre?
I did.
So that in itself would have just been a long process. So sorry that you went through that.
Thank you.
What did the weeks after that look like for you?
It was really, really tough. I spoke earlier about how going through this process, you kind of lose touch with your body because your body's not doing what you want it to. And I did really struggle with my body and my body image and everything like that in the months following that. But at the same time, I also I was happy that meant that my body knew what to do at the same time. Like, it's still implanted. I was still pregnant. This can happen for us.
Yeah. Okay. And then at what point did you make the decision that you wanted to try again?
So that was all in July of 2023. And I think that whole saga continued until I think it was about late September by the time it was all over.
Wow.
And I had passed it, and I had had a new period and everything. So we went straight into a transfer after that. Everyone had always said that once you've had a miscarriage, you're super fertile. So I was like, this is it. This has to be it. Yeah. And it was. So in November 2023, we transferred a 5 BC embryo and we got pregnant with our son, Fletcher.
Do you want to talk me through, if you're comfortable?
Oh, yeah, of course.
What happened with Fletcher?
Yeah. So I became pregnant with Fletcher in November of 2023. The HCG was a little bit slow rising to begin with, but it all evened out. And at our first ultrasound, everything was looking amazing. I had quite an anxious pregnancy with him after everything we had been through. I was Googling statistics every day, like, how likely is it today that I will lose him, and like watching the percentage of that chance go down. And then at about 19 weeks, I was diagnosed with velamentous cord insertion, which is where the umbilical cord doesn't really attach to the right spot in the placenta. And then I was also diagnosed with gestational diabetes. And I was having some issues with high blood pressure as well at that time. So that was really, really tough. And especially gestational diabetes, anyone that has had it would know it's awful. I cried every day. I couldn't eat enough. I was so worried about what it would do to Fletcher. It was a really tough time. I was having weekly scans with my specialist. I went private, which I'm really thankful for. I had so much support. And Fletcher was doing really great the whole time. Like, none of that ever seemed to have any impact on him. And then come to 26 weeks, we were going for an extra scan just because of the gestational diabetes, just to check on his growth. And we went to the scan and found out that his heart had just stopped beating.
I'm so sorry. Did they give you any, because you had that issue with your cord or his cord, did they give you any information about that when you had that diagnosis? Like, could that have any impact on your pregnancy, or you didn't really know?
She did give me some information, and it's definitely something that can lead to bad outcomes. But at the same time, a lot of people get it and it doesn't mean anything. So it's something that obviously in that moment I was absolutely terrified and wondered what that would mean. But at the end of the day, that wasn't what contributed to his death. After he was born, they could see from his placenta that his umbilical cord had split, which had meant that the main blood vessel ruptured. So it was an instant death for him.
Okay. Did you want to just talk me through that time, if you're comfortable, in how that felt and how what the next few weeks looked like after you had that information?
Yeah. So that all happened. I think the scan was at about 11 a.m. and it was completely out of the blue. I hadn't felt him move for, I think, probably since the afternoon before, but I'd always been told by midwives that at that stage of your pregnancy, you wouldn't expect to have like a regular pattern of movement. So although I was a little bit worried, I wasn't worried enough to go to the hospital or anything. So we went to that scan and we were told that he had passed away. And we basically went straight to the hospital from there to meet our OB. And Fletcher was born by a C-section that night. So about 8 hours after we found out. I had placenta previa, so I wasn't able to have a natural birth. So yeah, I had a C-section that I was completely under for. And we spent the next 3 days in hospital with Fletcher with a cuddle cot. So we got to create some beautiful memories with him, and some of our family were able to come in and meet him. And we had a photographer come in and take lots of photos. And it was the hardest time of my life, but probably also the most special time of my life as well. Yeah.
After you left the hospital, what did the following weeks look like for you guys? I could imagine it would have been a really tough time. And even if you wanted to just chat about some things that you might have done to honour Fletcher, or things that you do now to honour Fletcher as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I remember leaving the hospital, and you walk out of the hospital and you see everybody else going about their life, and you're like, so yeah, it was a bit of a blur. The main thing that I kind of remember, and the main impact that had on me in those weeks, was I just felt paralyzed. I wasn't able to make decisions. The smallest things in life just became so hard. Things like deciding what clothes to put on in the morning, deciding what to eat for breakfast, deciding what to eat for dinner. Like, I don't think anyone could comprehend that such a small decision, a seemingly small decision that you guys probably would just make on a normal day without thinking about it, just became the most momentous task, which I think comes from, there was a lot of decisions we had to make in those early days about, when would we birth? How would we birth? How long would we spend with him? Would we bury him? Would we cremate him? Would we have a funeral? Who would meet him? Who wouldn't? What photos do you take? What memories do you create? Like, there was so many decisions that both of us just got to a point where we couldn't make any decisions on anything. So yeah, life became really tough from that moment forward, basically.
Yeah.
And it was probably a period of a few months that we were both just coping. Really, we weren't living. I think about a month after we lost Fletcher, I got the drive to do something to honor him. I think that that's what any bereaved parent wants. It's just for their child's name to be spoken and for their child to be remembered and to be honored. So I started a fundraiser with Bears of Hope, who are a really fantastic charity in Australia who provide support to people going through miscarriage and stillbirth. And they're also the organisation in Australia who fundraises for cuddle cots. And if you don't know what a cuddle cot is, it's basically a bassinet that has a cooling system attached to it. So obviously, when someone passes away, their body will deteriorate unless they're kept cool. So the only way for someone to be able to keep their baby with them is to have a cooling device. So that was completely invaluable to us. Over the last, 100 years, people didn't have the capacity to stay with their baby. A lot of people didn't even get to meet their baby after they were born. So we'll be forever grateful for that opportunity to spend 3 days with Fletcher. So I just wanted to make sure that nobody else missed out on that opportunity. So I started a fundraiser thinking that we might raise $500, and a cuddle cot costs, I think, about $4,500. So I really, in my wildest dreams, did not think that we would even make enough to buy one cuddle cot. But I did it anyway. I shared it all over social media. I contacted the local newspapers and businesses and everything. And we ended up raising about $12,000 from that. Yeah, so it was really special. I was just crying for weeks. Every time a donation came through, it was just surreal that so many people wanted to honor him with us. So that was really, really special.
Yeah, that's incredible. We'll put the link in for Bears of Hope, and then where you can donate for Cradle Cots as well. We'll put that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so after this period, what's kind of next for you guys? Are you just taking some time to grieve and, move through life and try and get back to some sort of, I assume you're probably not working, you're just taking a break. What did, I guess, the months following look like for you?
Yeah. So I was lucky that in Australia, when you have a stillborn, you are eligible to still get leave from Centrelink from work. And my work was great with that as well. And they still gave me my paid maternity leave. So I was able to take a few months off, which I'm very thankful for. And the months following that were really difficult because it was a hard balance of trying to look forward and knowing that, time is of the essence in this journey and that you want to have another baby, but also feeling guilty because that meant it felt like we were putting Fletcher on the side burner, like he didn't mean anything to us anymore. So that was really difficult. And then also at the same time, I did have a C-section. So I was told that ideally I should wait 12 months before I got pregnant. But if you tell that to somebody who's already been waiting for years and has gone through what I'd been through, that was really, really difficult.
Yeah.
So we saw a maternal fetal medicine doctor and they agreed that we could try after 6 months. So that's what we did. So we had 3 embryos left from the cycle that we got Fletcher's embryo from. And I remember thinking how special it would be if one of those came to be a baby and how special it would be that they essentially grew up with Fletcher in the freezer, basically. So in December of 2024, so that's 7 months after Fletcher was born, we did another frozen transfer, which was unsuccessful.
Yeah, okay. I could imagine that would have been really challenging.
It was really hard. I think every time we used one of those embryos that was with him, it just became more and more real that that might not happen. And it may not seem like much to some people, but just to know that they were together would have been really special.
Yeah, of course. It's huge. How do you also, that obviously you've been going through this process for a long time and you've gone through a lot of 2-week waits. Is there anything that you find helpful to be able to move through that time?
Not really. Yeah. I think in that 2 weeks, I say 2 weeks, but I'm really crazy and I start testing at day 3 past transfer.
Yeah.
So it's not only 2 weeks for me.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good idea by kind of day 5 or 6 how things are looking, but I don't know how I get through it. People ask me that almost every day on social media and my response is I'm just delusional. And sometimes you just have to let yourself be delusional.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you decide to do another frozen transfer after that unsuccessful one?
We went straight back into another one the next month. So January 2025.
Yep. All right.
And that was a chemical pregnancy.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So we have had our fair share. I can't remember exactly which ones, but a few of these have been chemical pregnancies, not just straight negatives. So that brings a whole nother kind of pain on its own.
Of course, a loss is a loss. So,
and then it was at that point that we decided that we needed to change specialists. And obviously what I said before with all of the drama around my endometriosis surgery and stuff, I knew at that point I should change specialist. But when you're in that journey and you know that time is of the essence, sometimes you think it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't as well. So it was after that last transfer that we decided that, changing specialists might cost us some time, but it might open up a whole new world for us as well. So we changed specialist and kind of went through that whole intake and testing process again. So that was in February last year, February 2025. And as soon as I changed specialist, I did a scan with him on the very first visit. And he said to me, Katelyn, you have adenomyosis. And I just felt like I died inside. I was like, how have I just been through 5 years of fertility treatment? I had done, 10 rounds at that point. How are you only just picking up on this now? So he was also really shocked about the endometriosis story, and he said that it's time that they went back in and had another look and removed some more endometriosis. So we did that in March of 2025, and that was a 5-hour-long surgery where they took a lot of endo off of my uterus, my bladder, and my bowel. So that was quite extensive. And I also had an MRI at that point to confirm the adenomyosis as well.
Okay. And is there any further treatment for that post-surgery?
So adenomyosis, he said that my best treatment moving forward would be to go into suppression before any subsequent transfers.
Yeah.
So basically going into a medical menopause.
Yeah.
For a period of time. We originally thought that that would be about 2 months before each transfer, but luckily for me, when we went into that next transfer, after a month, looked like it had done its job sufficiently and we were able to proceed with a transfer. Yeah, with the new specialist, I went in for my 4th egg collection.
And were there any changes in protocol considering that you had this new diagnosis, or was it pretty similar to your other egg collections?
Pretty similar. My understanding is that adenomyosis doesn't impact anything to do with an egg collection. It's mostly just the uterine environment for a transfer.
Yep. Okay.
So we did the same protocol given that I had been getting a good number of eggs, and it was the egg collection before that I'd made the 4 embryos in one go. So we were pretty happy to stick with that protocol.
Yeah. Okay. So what did your egg collection look like numbers-wise?
So I went in for that egg collection in September of 2025, and we had 28 eggs collected, which I was doing all of the numbers, and I thought last time I had 20 collected and I got 4 embryos. So definitely going to get about 5 or 6 embryos this time.
Yeah.
But every round is different, I learned. And out of that, we got 2 embryos frozen, which obviously I was still so happy with.
Yeah.
But also disappointed.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
All right. And then, so then you went on the medication to bring your body into menopause. And then once you had the green light on that, I assume you had to take more medication before having your frozen embryo transfer. Is that what that looks like?
Yeah. So I used Cynorol for my suppression, which is a nasal spray, for about a month. And then that pretty much stops all of your own hormone production. So like those previous transfers, I did have to do complete hormone replacement to kind of replenish my levels in a way.
Yeah.
So we did that transfer in November of 2025.
Yeah.
And that was another chemical pregnancy, which, as much as that was heartbreaking, it kind of gave me hope that maybe diagnosing the adenomyosis and treating with the suppression could be our missing puzzle piece.
Yeah. Okay. How's your mental health at this point?
Pretty bad.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, it was really, really difficult, and still trying to balance the grief of Fletcher and trying to keep his memory alive and all of that while still yearning for a baby that I could have here with me was really, really difficult.
Yeah, I could imagine that would just put a whole another layer on it of grief, and yeah, there would just be so many emotions that would come with each transfer.
So yeah, that was a chemical pregnancy. Everything passed like naturally though, so it wasn't a bad experience. And as I said, it gave me hope. So we went into another transfer straight away and we became pregnant in December 2025. But again, I had another early miscarriage for that one.
Okay.
So much like the last situation, I was really passionate about trying to pass that naturally, but it was a miscarriage. So my body just wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, which seems to be a bit of a story of my life at this point. So my specialist this time was really, really great, as I was seeing the new specialist, and they agreed to let me try the medication. So I took the medication and I waited at home for days. I remember just laying in bed, I think for about 5 days, because you don't want to go out. You don't want to, be walking down the aisle at the supermarket and have it come out. So I was just home for 5 days. I was miserable. I was hurt. I was broken. And every time I moved, every time I coughed, I was like, is this going to be the moment? So that was really, really difficult. And then it got to a point where it just hadn't happened. And I was still too scared to have a D&C because I really didn't want to give my body any other reason to not have another pregnancy.
Yeah.
So I went back to my specialist and they gave me another round of the medication, which the medication can be quite awful. Like it gives you really strong cramps and makes you bleed a lot. But anyway, I took the second round of medication And again, I think then I had about 7 days at home just waiting, and nothing happened. It still didn't pass on its own. So after all of that, I had to concede and have a DNC, which was really tough because obviously I wish I just went for that straight away because that 2 weeks was really mentally draining.
Yeah, I can imagine it being so drawn out. How is your relationship at this point as well? You've been through so much. I assume that, there would have been a lot of ups and downs. How have you guys, navigated this time together?
There has been ups and downs. I'm extremely lucky with my husband, Joel. He's just the most beautiful man. He's always been one to share his emotions honestly and truthfully and not shy away from them, which I think means that we are able to just have a lot of open conversations about what's happening and nothing is kind of, pushed down. We talk it all out. There's been definitely times over the years where I've felt very guilty about the fact that, I feel like I'm the problem because he doesn't have any fertility issues, but that's not something that he's ever let me continue to feel. But there's always obviously going to be that layer of guilt there, but I'm just extremely lucky that we have a really strong relationship. And in a weird way, everything that's happened to us just brings us closer together. It's never been something that's threatened to tear us apart.
Yeah. Okay. And then how did you process, number one, having to accept to have the DNC, and then after you've had it, was there layers of anxiety in that?
There was so much anxiety. I met with the surgeon the day before and just really stressed to him how scared I was about Asherman's. And he agreed to change the procedure slightly to be more of a gentle kind of DNC. So I think a lot of doctors just go in and they do some scraping, but it's not really guided by camera. So he agreed to do a hysteroscopy at the same time so that he could make sure he was doing the absolute bare minimum to get the products of conception out. So I definitely felt really reassured after that, but it was still a really hard and bitter pill to swallow having to go through that after I'd just already been through so much.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that and for everything that you've been through. Have you lent on any other kinds of support throughout that time? Like, see any tools, or have you sought counselling or psychology or anything that's helped you sort of move through?
I have, definitely. So I've had several different counsellors and psychologists over the years, and I've also always lent really strongly on people on social media. So it wasn't really until about 9 months ago now that I started sharing my journey on social media, which has helped a lot. But before that, I just took a lot of comfort in watching other people's journeys and that making me feel less alone. That was the thing that I found helped me the most.
Yeah.
And I've also been really lucky in this journey in that I never felt like I had to hide this. I'd always been really open with my workplaces, open with my family and my friends. I just always felt like I had support there when I needed it. And we went in for another egg collection in March of 2026.
Okay.
So that was our 5th egg collection. We had 21 eggs collected. So again, I was doing the numbers in my head, thinking at least 4, surely. And I remember getting the call on day 3 with an update. And I think I still had about 8 embryos growing. So I was stoked, and I was, talking to ChatGPT and asking the odds, and ChatGPT was saying, you can expect at least 6 or 7 this time. And, I was so happy. And then I called them on day 5 for my update, and they said, we've got nothing at this point, but wait until tomorrow.
My gosh.
So I was absolutely shattered.
Of course.
So we get to day 6 and I call them and they've managed to freeze 1.
Oh,
So that was heartbreaking, but obviously again, I was so thankful to even have 1.
Yeah, of course. Did they give you any indication as to why those numbers dropped so significantly from that?
Sometimes they say that it's the egg quality until day 3 and then it's the sperm quality from day 3 onwards, depending on when they drop off.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of research either way. So the specialists just say that, it just happens and sometimes you really can't narrow it down. I mean, there's certain things that I've been through in these years. The surgeries for the endometriosis can cause reduced ovarian reserve. I've put on a lot of weight from all of the hormones and pregnancy and mental health. So that probably contributes to lower egg quality. My husband put on weight, so that probably contributes to sperm quality. And over the years, we've probably just not been as careful with, taking supplements. And I just got to a point that I just couldn't make myself take tablets anymore. Yeah, it seems so silly, but even just taking a tablet, I was like, I just can't do it anymore.
Oh, it's not silly at all. Like, there's only so much you can take, especially with your mental capacity. And like, you need to also live your life over 7 years and you've been through so much. So that is totally understandable that you just need to live sometimes and not be so fixated on all the little things. So what did you decide to do? You had this one frozen embryo.
So we went straight into another round of suppression. So another month of Synarel. Yep. Which worked. It did the job again. And then we transferred in May of this year. So this month.
Okay.
And again, that was negative. And this time I didn't even have a chemical pregnancy, which really threw me. Some people probably think it's quite weird, but I would prefer to have a chemical than nothing because at least I know my body tried. Yeah. So now it's just kind of that thought of maybe that wasn't the missing piece of the puzzle. Why didn't it implant?
Okay. Did your fertility specialist give you any advice or any indication as to like what else could be missing or?
Yes and no. At this point, we've just decided that we need to put more of a focus on egg health and sperm health. Okay. So our plan moving forward is for the next 3 or 4 months, we're taking a break. I am taking more supplements than I would like to admit. Yeah. I'm starting to see a naturopath. I'm trying to do acupuncture and fertility massage and ear seeding and work on my mental health, my fitness. And my husband and I are also taking Mounjaro, which my specialist encouraged for 2 reasons. One, obviously being weight loss, which can improve egg quality. And 2, there is a lot of new research about Mounjaro showing that it does reduce inflammation in the body. And endometriosis and adenomyosis are essentially inflammation. So it will be really interesting to see if that contributes to better numbers in a few months' time.
Yeah. And how are you feeling moving into this next phase and taking on all these things?
It's really bittersweet. Sometimes it's nice to have a forced break where you know that you have to do it. It doesn't make it any easier because you know that you're on a timeline and I wanted a baby 7 years ago, not in another year. And essentially knowing that I won't be doing an egg collection for another 3 or 4 months means like I won't be pregnant for at least a year, really. Like by the time we do suppression and transfers, and that's a really bitter pill to swallow. But at the same time, yeah, it's nice to not have appointments and things. I've been able to book a little trip and I'm just living my life a little bit and just working on myself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you've obviously been through so much. I want to know what this, the last 7 years has taught you about yourself.
It's probably taught me that I'm stronger than I ever realized. Not that that's been a choice. People tell me every day that I'm so strong, but I guess my response is that I just don't want to be strong anymore. But I am. It's taught me that things can happen to good people. It doesn't matter how much of a good person you are. You're not immune to these things, and that life is short, that you need to appreciate everything while you have it and do as much as you can because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. And earlier on in our conversation, you spoke about in the early days when you were trying that made you start viewing your body in a different way and feeling like it wasn't doing, quote unquote, what it's meant to do. Has that carried through your whole journey, or have you had ebbs and flows of changing the way you feel about your body?
It definitely has carried through to a certain extent. Probably the last 6 months, I've seen a really big improvement with that. Working with a psychologist and trying to reframe the fact that I had a baby. Yes, he passed away, but my body still did that. I grew a baby. He was beautiful. He had 10 fingers and 10 toes, and I did that. Regardless of the outcome, my body grew a human, and thinking of that has helped me to reconnect with my body in a positive way. And I think I mentioned before about how I'd made so many changes over the years, and I wasn't wearing makeup and I wasn't wearing perfume and I wasn't getting my hair dyed and I was being so careful. That's something that over the past kind of 6 to 12 months, I've changed and I've let myself wear makeup and I'm doing my hair and I'm wearing perfume. And I think that that's just been a really good way to reconnect with my body and increase my self-confidence. And yeah, so I've definitely seen a huge improvement, and I don't hate my body anymore. I appreciate what it's done for me, and I appreciate what it does for me every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have experienced a lot of loss and heartbreak over the last 7 years, and to just be sitting here and talking about it shows incredible strength. Do you have any messages that you would want to give to someone who might be experiencing loss or reoccurrent loss?
Just to go easy on yourself. It's really easy to question your grief and question whether you are grieving the right way, or, you know, are people looking at me and thinking that I'm grieving too hard or not grieving enough? And that's a question that I often ask myself, and I'm nervous about the way that people interpret my grief. But at the same time, I think it's really important to just let yourself grieve in whatever way works for you. And there is no right and wrong. Some people may need to grieve a miscarriage for a couple of years, and some people might move on in a few weeks. There's no right or wrong. Just let yourself feel the way that you need to feel in the moment.
Yeah. And is there anything that you wish people knew more about fertility?
I am really passionate about thinking that this needs to be discussed more from an early age. I remember in school basically being told, if you have sex one time without a condom, you're going to get pregnant. And oh, how I wish that was the truth. And the reality is that for more and more people every day, that's not how it works. And I think it's scaremongering people, and they're not taking their fertility serious. So I think that there just needs to be a lot more education around possible complications with fertility and how you can manage those. And especially from a medical point of view, like in my early days of being told, you're young, just keep trying, just go on a holiday and it will happen. I just wish I could go back to those doctors right now and say, look where I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah, just more awareness.
And then do you just have any final advice for anyone who's going through infertility or anything else you wanted to share today?
My biggest thing that I would like to pass on to anybody else going through IVF is to trust yourself and to trust your body. As I've shared today, specialists have made mistakes around my care and they've missed things, and that's really, really hard. And it just shows that you really need to stay on top of it yourself. You need to trust your instincts. You need to question treatment plans. You just really need to understand what's happening. If your specialist is suggesting a treatment, ask why and really understand why they're recommending that to you. And if you don't agree, or if you've done your own research, ask those questions. And if they're a good specialist, they're going to understand that and they're going to listen to you. They're not going to take that kind of as a personal attack. You just need to, advocate for yourself is my main message.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing advice, Katelyn. Thank you so much for this conversation, for being incredibly vulnerable today and sharing your story. I know it will be really helpful for anyone else who might be navigating any kind of journey, really, because there's so many different layers to it, but you're incredibly strong. And I'm so hopeful that, you will get your miracle baby. And I'm just, please keep in touch and let us know how things are going for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for giving me the space to share my story.
This has been The Space Between Two Lines. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and register on our website to share your story. The link is in the bio. Until next time.